Hey guys, Joe here. Thanks very much for tuning into my channel today. I've got a rematch against a blue-black mill deck from yesterday. Now blue-black mill, like Bant Eldrazi, was a deck that did surprisingly well in this past weekend's GP in Los Angeles. Actually, one pilot took this blue-black mill deck to an undefeated record in day one, going 8-0 and 1 draw. So a lot of people were left wondering, what changed with this blue-black mill deck? Did it get some new tech, or is this guy just, having a crazy lucky run of draws in games? And I guess the only answer really is that there's a creature printed in Shadows over Innistrad called Manic Scribe that's sort of like another Hedron Crab, but it works with Delirium and makes people mill, makes the opponents mill during their upkeep. Seems like a pretty innocuous card, not even that strong for the existing blue-black mill deck to even want to add it, but apparently it's had a pretty strong impact. After the deck performed so well, I think a lot of people got psyched on the possibility of mill being a viable strategy in Modern, and Shelldock Isle actually saw a pretty big price spike. This is one of those hideaway lands. If an opponent... if any library has 20 or fewer cards in it, you can pay 1 blue, tap Shelldock Isle, and play the card that was hidden away underneath it, basically getting the mill player a free card. So yeah, it's a very cool deck. I love seeing alternate win conditions in Modern. Looking at the opening hands, I had 2 lands, including a Cavern of Souls. And then a bunch of great creatures. Cursecatcher, Silvergill, Merrow Reejerey for the 1/2/3 curve, Kira if I feel it's necessary, and some removal in Dismember. So very well-rounded, beautiful hand. On the opponent side of things, we see they have that Shelldock Isle that'll probably be played on turn 1. Ghost Quarter, take me off of things like Mutavault, I guess. Flooded Strand to fix the mana a little bit. Mind Funeral, Hedron Crab, Archive Trap. I'm probably not going to be searching my library very much, so hopefully this will just be kind of a dead card. And Jace's Phantasm. It's 1 blue creature, 1/1 flyer, but it becomes a 5/5 flyer as long as I have 10 cards in my graveyard. Now that's actually not too hard, even for a normal deck to fulfill. Like a Jund deck puts way more than 10 cards into my graveyard during the course of a regular game. So this is a pretty powerful win condition in the mill deck as well. Looks like a pretty easy keep for both players. So the opponent chose to keep, and I chose to keep. They're on the play. So as I predicted, they're going to run out Shelldock Isle. They're going to look at the top 4 cards of their library, and we can actually see what they were and see what they chose. It's a pretty interesting replay feature. So look at the top 4, and it's Glimpse the Unthinkable, Mesmeric Orb. Well, Mesmeric Orb went to the bottom of the library, Visions of Beyond went to the bottom, and Marshflats went to the bottom. So he kept a Glimpse the Unthinkable, which makes me mill 10. He put that under the Shelldock Isle. So great value there with the hideaway land, as long as he gets to use it. I draw another Cursecatcher. So for my turn, I'm going to play an island and a Cursecatcher. Draw into another Mind Funeral. He's getting more and more mill cards in his hand. Okay, pretty smart play. He's going to play Hedron Crab and then follow up with his Landfall. Makes me mill 3 cards. He's going to crack that fetch land, make me mill 3 more cards. Gets a Watery Grave. Just going to turn on my Island Walk, but I don't think he has much choice with his fetch lands. He's got a lot of islands in the deck. And plays out that Jace's Phantasm. Okay, I haven't drawn land yet. I'm going to want to hit a 3rd land pretty soon. So with Hedron Crab up, I'm not going to have great attacks here, I don't think, unless I do something about that Hedron Crab. So I'm going to start by playing out Cursecatcher and then dismember the Hedron Crab. So the Hedron Crab is sort of like, I guess I was saying about Manic Scribe, sort of an innocuous card. It's just a silly little 0/2 1-drop, but it gets so much value out of repeated landfall, especially with fetch lands. This guy will mill me for 6 every time the guy draws a fetch land. Currently, it's just a wall against my Cursecatcher who wants to attack. So I choose this turn to play out Cursecatchers, just so I'll have counterspell effects on the board in case he wants to try to resolve things like Mind Funeral, and also just get this Miller off the table. keep my graveyard relatively empty and my library relatively stocked up. The opponent drew a Crypt Incursion. It's an interesting card to run in the main deck. It exiles all creature cards from a target player's graveyard, usually mine, I guess, and he gains 3 life for each card exiled this way. It's strong protection against aggro decks, which I guess there are many in Modern. Burn decks as well as just creature-based sort of aggro decks. The opponent's going to attack with his 1/1 flyer. I'm going to take 1. And with the Cursecatchers on the table, the opponent decides not to try to resolve a Mind Funeral. So the Cursecatcher paying off that turn. I drew into my 3rd land right on time. So I'll get in with the 2 Cursecatchers. And knowing the opponent likely plays some removal, I decide to start off with Kira. Can also block Jace's Phantasm in a pinch. With my mana online now, I'm going to be able to start playing out my creatures, potentially at an accelerated pace due to Merrow Reejerey tapping and untapping stuff, specifically untapping my lands. The opponent's going to go and try to resolve Mind Funeral here. In order to counter this, I would need to sacrifice both of my Cursecatchers, so I gave it some thought. But thinking about what's in my hand and what my sort of avenue to victory is going to have to be, I realized that if I play out a Reejerey next turn, I'm going to be able to swing for 6, bringing the opponent down to 9. And then if I follow up with a second Reejerey on the following turn, I'll have 3 3/3s, including the first Merrow Reejerey, as well as Kira Great Glass Spinner to attack and hopefully get the opponent all the way down to 0 the following turn. So I'm going to keep the Cursecatchers on the board. It's going to make his Jace's Phantasm a little bit bigger, but I'm not in danger of dying anytime soon. So he's going to go ahead and resolve the Mind Funeral here. I have to mill until I find 4 lands. It looks like so far I hit 3 pretty early, but have to dig quite a lot to hit that next 4th one. All in all, not the most powerful Mind Funeral. Putting something like 10 cards into my graveyard. Very similar to Glimpse the Unthinkable. Alright, so Jace's Phantasm is going to grow. He's probably going to attack with that guy, and I'll go straight down to 10. Draw a 3rd Reejerey. A little bit clunky, but I can't really complain. For my turn, I'm going to play out that first Reejerey and follow that line that I outlined in the last turn, hitting the opponent for 6, taking him from 15 down to 9. And pass the turn back. The opponent looks like he drew a Visions of Beyond that turn. 1 blue instant. If a graveyard has 20 or more cards in it, draw 3 cards instead of drawing a single card. However, no graveyards have 3 cards in it yet. It seemed like it was a good idea getting rid of that Hedron Crab earlier. So the opponent's going to go with Mind Funeral here. It looks like he could have played Crypt Incursion, choosing to gain life, but instead goes with Mind Funeral. I give this one a little bit of thought as well, but it's the same idea now as the last time. I'm even going to be able to tap his Jace's Phantasm down if I want to with the Reejerey trigger. So this is going to resolve. There's 1 land, 2 lands, 3 lands, and 4 lands. So all of those are going to go to my graveyard. The opponent's going to pass with a blocker up. And I draw into an Island Walk Lord. So whether I play out the Reejerey, tap his Jace's Phantasm, or play out the Island Walk Lord, sort of regardless, I'm going to be able to push lethal here. These guys are going to be 3/3s, and that's enough on their own with Island Walk. But why not have Kira attack as well? I'm just going to tap this Jace's Phantasm. I don't, the opponent has no outs here. Something maybe like, let's see, Slaughter Pact. Double Slaughter Pact, but then he couldn't pay for it. Slaughter Pact plus Dismember, but then Dismember would take him down to 5, and if he dismembers like the attacker here, I'm still going to get a trigger and get to tap his Jace's Phantasm. So a little bit silly, but I'll lead with the Silvergill anyway. I like drawing cards. I'll reveal the Island Walk Lord that I'm going to cast anyway, and cast that guy, tap the Jace's Phantasm, and opponent was a little bit confused about how Reejerey was working. And I'll swing here for 11, and that'll just be game. So the opponent scooped it up. Pretty decent game 1. Now this was pretty fun. For the second game, I actually sideboarded in all 15 of my sideboard cards. So you can see after drawing my opening 7, I still have 68 cards in the deck. I started the match with 75. The least relevant card in my sideboard, believe it or not, is Tidebinder Mage, who is still a 2/2 Merfolk with 2 devotions. So Relic is decent. It makes the Jace's Phantasm smaller. It can exile stuff so that Crypt Incursion doesn't do anything. There's one other card that cares. Visions of Beyond. It makes it so that Visions of Beyond can't draw 3 cards. So I brought in Relic of Progenitus, 2 of those guys, 3 Tidebinder Mages, 3 Negates, 3 Dispels, and 4 Hurkyl's Recalls. Now, this blue-black mill deck actually plays main deck Ensnaring Bridges, so on top of Mesmeric Orb. So the Hurkyl's Recalls are actually very relevant. So 15 cards in. I'm playing with the same number of lands, so it can get a little bit tricky making sure that I hit land drops with 15 additional non-land cards in the deck. But looking at the opening hands, I had 1 land in a Mutavault, not really optimal. I'd like it to be a blue source, but I have AEther Vial, so this is a snap keep. And on the opponent's side, we can see he has 4 lands, a Crypt Incursion to stay in the game, gaining some life. Mesmeric Orb is a nice engine. This is a pretty cool card. It says whenever a permanent becomes untapped, that permanent's controller puts the top card of his or her library into his or her graveyard. So just by tapping lands and then untapping it the next turn, it's an engine working for the mill deck, just slowly ticking down the number of cards in my library. Archive Trap, again, a little bit of a dead card. So this looks like a possible mulligan for the opponent. I don't know exactly what they're looking for in their opening hands. It only plays blue and black, so he doesn't have Path to Exile to turn on the Archive Trap, just has to hope that I'm playing fetch lands. But I think the opponent chose to keep this. He did, and I'll choose to keep as well. He'll open with Shelldock Isle as well. And it looks like he chose to put a Visions of Beyond underneath the Shelldock Isle. I immediately draw into a second land, which is really fantastic. I choose to play out the Mutavault just in case he takes away my Silvergill Adept with, I don't know, some piece of hand disruption. The opponent goes ahead and plays Mesmeric Orb. I'm going to have to mill 1 during my untap step. And I put a Negate into the graveyard. AEther Vial will go up to 1, and I draw a Master of the Pearl Trident. As long as this AEther Vial stays on the table, it looks like this game is going to go pretty well for me. I'll play the Cavern of Souls, play Silvergill Adept, revealing an Island Walk Lord, and draw into a Negate. My counterspell is a little bit clunky here without any blue mana, but I've got more than enough gas just to start pushing damage. So next turn I'm going to have to mill 2 because of the Mesmeric Orb, and the opponent's going to have to mill 2 right now on their untap step. Draws into a Jace's Phantasm, which is, I guess, a decent draw. Potentially establishing some kind of clock, though it absolutely doesn't compare to my clock. So I went straight to my draw step and forgot about the Mesmeric Orb. So I'm going to back up, actually undoing that draw. A little bit sloppy, but when playing against cards that you don't see very often, it's pretty easy just to skip right past it. So the opponent says, yeah, sure, undo the draw. So I'll mill the Tidebinder Mage, mill the Cursecatcher, and then ultimately draw into a Relic of Progenitus. Pretty decent draw. It's relevant for the Jace's Phantasm right now. He cares about how many cards are in the graveyard, but I'm not really afraid of the Jace's Phantasm. Seems stronger at this point just to activate Mutavault and attack. Opponent chooses not to block, so I'll bring in Lord, and the opponent takes 6 that turn. Next turn I'm going to have to mill 4. On their turn the opponent has to mill just 1. Let's take a look at what that card is that he milled. Profane Memento. I don't think I've ever seen this card before this match. Whenever a creature card is put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, you gain 1 life. Alright, so probably sideboard tech for this blue-black mill deck. Whether the creature is milled or goes from the battlefield, this guy's going to gain 1 life. So if he gets that on the table, I could potentially get a few extra turns just by gaining life. The opponent's going to play a swamp and pass. Let's take a look at their hand right now. Crypt Incursion is an instant. So after I mill for my turn, 4 cards, they can choose to go ahead and cast Crypt Incursion now if they want to gain life with the mana up. Otherwise, they just have this Archive Trap rotting in their hand. So going to my untap step, I'm going to mill 4 cards. We see a Master of Waves, a Kira, a Spreading Seas, and a Mutavault. None of those are a blue source, so they're all not that bad going to the graveyard. I'm going to leave AEther Vial on 2, draw into a Merrow Reejerey for the turn. Now, with Island Walk online, if the opponent doesn't have any removal, we can just threaten quite a lot of damage. So for the turn, I'm going to go ahead and put that Master of the Pearl Trident onto the battlefield with AEther Vial, attack Mutavault, and swing for 10 between 3, 3, and 4. Opponent going from... I'm sorry, is it... Yeah, I think I misspoke there. It's actually 2 Lords buffing Mutavault and Silvergill, making it 4, 4, and 3, so it's 11, not 10. So the opponent thought it was 10. I remind him that it's 11, and he ends up at 3 life. So he's got this Crypt Incursion, but he's going to pass with all of this mana up. Chooses to crack a fetch land now to get a swamp. A little bit interesting, and looks like he's going to attack with the Jace's Phantasm for 1. I forget that the guy has flying. I try to block him. He says it's flying. Okay, so I'll take 1. A little bit awkward here. So untapping my permanents, I have to mill a little bit. There are my blue sources. There's a Hurkyl's Recall, and another blue source, and another land. However, I've got more than enough to win here. Let's take a look at my graveyard to see how Crypt Incursion might work out. 1, 2, 3, only 4 creatures in the graveyard, so Crypt Incursion, gaining 3 for each of those, will put the opponent up to 14. Now, I don't have any idea what he's playing. I've seen Crypt Incursion before, so I probably should have been thinking about it, and if blue-black mill starts showing up more, of course, I'll come to expect Crypt Incursion a little bit more. If I try to resolve the Relic of Progenitus, he would probably cast the Crypt Incursion in response, or in response to me trying to activate the Relic. So probably wouldn't have gotten the job done this turn anyway if I played the Relic. So my thought here was that with all of this mana up, I saw all this blue mana, I figured maybe he's playing Cryptic Command. Like I said, I didn't think about Crypt Incursion, haven't seen it in a little while. So I chose to go to the attack step, presenting what looked like way overkill. And if the opponent tries to tap my team, I could activate Mutavault and get in for the sneaky win. In the end, I probably should have just activated Mutavault and attacked with it, since Crypt Incursion was in fact the card the opponent has. So here we can see I'm presenting 10 this time, 3 and 3 and 4. But the opponent casts Crypt Incursion is going to go up to 14. And we can see if I attacked with the Mutavault, it would have still been lethal. But as it stands, they go up to 14, they're going to take 10 and go right back down to 4. I've got a couple of Harbingers. I can bounce this Jace's Phantasm right now, but I can also just do it next turn if I want to, so no rush on that. I'll play the Relic here and leave mana up to crack it in response to anything. So seeing all the pressure here and without any answer to it, the opponent just goes ahead and scoops. We see I still have 50 cards in my library here, so it wasn't really necessary that game to bring in my 15 sideboard cards and run with a 75 card deck. But I think it's a pretty decent strategy as long as all of your cards are in at least a little bit relevant. If you're playing Hibernations and, I don't know, Graph Digger's Cages in your sideboard and those cards are totally irrelevant in this matchup, then maybe don't bring those in. But as I said at the beginning of this game, pretty much all of my cards in my sideboard are at least a little bit relevant. The least relevant being Tidebinder Mage, who's still a body who can attack and win the game. So yeah, you guys might be seeing more of this deck in Modern. As I mentioned, Shelldock Isle got a pretty nice price spike once people saw the blue-black mill deck on camera this past weekend. So it seems like the deck is getting more popular, and I expect to see more of it. So again, thanks for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed it. Please leave any comments you have. Please subscribe if you haven't already. And I'll catch you in the next one. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.